about today is episode 2 of translating. Now, for you to be aware of these episodes, which are around 25 episodes, in which that I will be talking about how to translate, and that's what's called translating. That's why I call them translating and not translation, because I'm just showing you some of the things, some of the aspects that you need to be aware of when you are translating and how you translate them. Well, today I'm going to actually talk about syntax a little bit, and how syntax is actually being done, and looking at grammar, looking at what is required in English, or what are the different parts of the grammar that you need to be aware of in order to be able to understand the actual text, starting with syntax, which is the most basic, or grammar, which is the most basic element here. Hi, Mr. J. Now, when we are looking at the most basic element in the text, which is grammar and syntax, this is really the first step, really. It's not really the only step that you need to start with. You should not start with that one. I've got here Ramadan Kareem. What is required really is to understand the grammar. But of course, in understanding the grammar does not mean that you are going to translate according just only to grammar. You have other elements to talk about. But because this episode is specifically based on grammar, I'm going to cover only grammatical elements in the process of translation. Let's have a look at my here. What is my what I have prepared for you in terms of the in terms of the text, and I have prepared for you some sort of an article, some sort of presentation, which I hope that you will follow. And it seems to be that it's not very clear, so let me just sort of adjust it so it's clear, and or you can actually follow it up as well. Now, it seems to be that I cannot actually get it, so I'm just going to actually move and show you it in a different angle, from a different angle. As you can see here, we are talking about the actual components that are supposed to be in grammar. Let me start from the beginning. As you know, that there is language, and in language we are looking at grammar, we're looking at words, style, and sounds, which I will be looking at first before I'm going to move on to any other elements or any other parts that you need to be aware of and you need to be concerned with. Now, in terms of what you should be looking at in this particular element, you need to look at, let me just make this into a show first, so you can actually see it better and more efficiently. So these are the elements, which are grammar, words, style, sounds, which they will have also from them as meaning, and then meaning is relating to language, and language, you go to meaning from these 4 elements to go to meaning, which is the most important part, as I said before, in order to get to reach translation. And now, what are the language components? Well, first of all, you need to look at the grammar, which is what I'm talking about in this episode in particular. That's what I am going to be covering now. Now, in terms of the, when it comes to grammar and syntax, let me just make it a bit closer so you can actually see better. Here, you find that we're talking about what makes a sentence a sentence. Of course, what makes a sentence in English is starting with subject, verb, and object, or rest of the sentence. That is in English. And then under that, for example, like I want an orange, so you look at subject, verb, and object. And when you are translating it, you're translating it أريد برتقالة, I want an orange. يريد برتقالة, and أريد is verb, different kind of system. So then after that you have, after the sentence, which is the clause. The clause is like a sentence, Actually, one clause is one sentence, but a sentence can have more than one clause. So that's for you to know. So it can be 2 clauses, 3 clauses, 4 clauses in a sentence. And here, for example, the clause will be within another clause, main clause and secondary clause. The book I bought was useful. So you have the book was useful and the book I bought. 2 things. Of course, الكتاب الذي اشتريته, and here you add the word الذي. You have to add the word الذي in this case in order to do that. Sorry, what's this B-stroke grammar? What's the question you want to reply? Let me just see. I have I don't know what the B-stroke is trying to tell me, but to reply, but I'm busy with this. So now, as you can see, this is the book I bought was useful. It can be translated in 2 ways. الكتاب الذي اشتريته أو ابتعته كان مفيدا أو كان الكتاب الذي اشتريته مفيدا. So there are 2 clauses within each other. The book was useful and the book I bought. And here we are getting into more complex element here, which is 2 clauses which make one single sentence. Because a clause is subject, verb, object. It's short, but a sentence can have more than one clause, as I said earlier. What is so special about the book I bought was useful is that in English you don't say which, but in Arabic you do. So you'd say الكتاب الذي اشتريته كان مفيدا أو كان الكتاب الذي اشتريته مفيدا. Okay, so you have to put a الذي in Arabic, but in English you don't have to in this particular sentence. Then after you finished with the sentence and the clause, there comes the phrase. And the phrase is the next one along. The next one along is the phrase. Now in the phrase, of course, you can find that it has got different types. And these different types of phrases, which is smaller than a clause and smaller than a sentence, and these are the actual ones that you need to be concerned about. A phrase is smaller than a clause. In other words, a clause will have few phrases in it. The same applies to the sentence. The sentence will have many phrases. And the phrases can be either noun phrase, NP, noun phrase, verb phrase, verb and verb phrase, VP, adjective phrase, prepositional phrase, adverb phrase. So there's quite a few different types of phrases that you need to be aware of, and you need to know their structure. Now, the first one is the noun phrase. And in the noun phrase, for example, this one, the completion of this project. This is a noun phrase, consists more than one noun, and consists of also a preposition in it and a deictic word, the word this, and the article or particle, which is called, which is there. Now these are the 3 different elements that are in this noun phrase. When we are translating this noun phrase, we have to be looking at the completion of this project. We need to look at how do we translate it. Because of the word of, there are no 2 nouns here. One noun here and another noun here. 2 nouns. First noun and the second noun. You start with the first noun because it's before the word of. And that's how it works. So you say the completion of this project. So you start with completion. إكمال أو اكتمال هذا المشروع. اكتمال هذا المشروع أو الانتهاء من هذا المشروع. Okay? So this is how it works with this one. The actual first noun is the one that you start with before the of. This is the main noun. And the other one is the actual second noun. So you start with this one because there's of. If there is no of, then you start with this one. So in other words, انتهاء هذا المشروع أو اكتمال هذا المشروع. That's how it works when you are trying to translate this particular one. That interesting concept. Here, it's another kind of another noun phrase. This noun phrase consists of an adjective and a noun. Again here, what you do, you focus on the noun, which is the concept. You say تلك الفكرة المثيرة للاهتمام. تلك الفكرة المثيرة للاهتمام. And that's how you work with that one. We move on to the next one, which is another noun phrase here. And this noun phrase is a blue-colored shirt. A blue-colored shirt. This is a blue-colored shirt, which means it's a noun phrase. You have a blue and colored and shirt. Shirt is the main noun and the rest. This is the main noun and the rest is following it. Whereas this one, the completion is the main noun and that's being followed. So a blue-colored shirt will be a shirt that is made of blue. And these are the three noun phrases that we have covered. So far, we have covered the sentence, the clause, and one type of the phrases, which is the noun phrase. Now let's move on to talk about the second after these noun phrases, which is the verb phrase. And the verb phrase, of course, is similar to this one. Here's an example. The project aims at raising awareness among, so it's raising, it should be raising, not raise. Aims to raise, we can say, aims to raise awareness. And here is what it says here, aims to raise awareness among students. Now here we have two verbs, aims and to raise. Of course, to raise is not really, it is a verb, but this verb is really an infinitive verb, to raise. أن تنشر الوعي, to raise awareness, لأن تنشر الوعي. This now verb phrase, which starts with a verb, and this is the rest of the verb phrase, and this is what you start with in terms of translating to understand and to know what it's all about. I have one of the followers, it's called B-Stroke Gaming YT. I don't know what he's up to. He doesn't seem to actually, this person who is following us seems to be interested in what we are talking about here. The project aims to raise awareness among students. Now, aims to raise awareness means يهدف إلى أن ينشر الوعي بين الطلبة. إذن يهدف إلى أن ينشر الوعي بين الطلبة. هذا المشروع. إذن when we translate it, of course, we bring the verb before the subject. يهدف هذا المشروع أو المشروع إلى نشر الوعي بين الطلبة. Then we move on to another part, which is the adjective phrase. And here, of course, when we look at the adjective phrase, we look at how to translate that adjective phrase, as in the case of a blue-colored shirt. Blue-colored, this is the adjective phrase. How do you translate it? الملون بالأزرق. إذن قميص ملون بالأزرق. And this is a noun phrase. Then we go after the noun phrase and we have prepositional phrase. And here, this is a prepositional phrase which starts with preposition. With flowers. That is the prepositional phrase. So here, of course, this sentence, I used it, or I have actually given you this because it's a little bit problematic in that it has two meanings and two separate meanings. One meaning could be is that the girls, they carry flowers, and the other one is that the boy is the one who's carrying flowers. So it depends on which one we want to look at. So we can translate it as قابل الصبي الفتيات مع الورود أو حاملا الورود if it is him, أو حاملات الورود if إذا كان يتحدث عن البنات. فهذا لها معنيين، هذه العبارة أو هذه الفريز اللي هي عبارة في حالة الجر. بعدها نأتي إلى الصيغة التي هي بالنسبة للأدفيرب phrase، يعني الظرفية، العبارة الظرفية. العبارة الظرفية طبعا the adverbial phrase is a phrase that can be translated in English into a manner of, in a quiet manner. Quietly means in a quiet manner. Carefully means in a careful manner. So here we can say that the man cooked the meal quietly and carefully. طهى أو طبخ الرجل وجبته أو الوجبة بهدوء وبكل حذر وحيطة. This way is quite a good way, if we can say بأسلوب هادئ وحذر أو بحذر وهدوء. هكذا, this way we translate the actual phrase, the adverb phrase, quietly and carefully. And this way we have actually covered really all the different types of the sentences or phrases that, if you like, and which I would like you to be aware of. And let me just go back to me so that you can actually see me. This is really what we have done, which is to look at the syntax or the grammar in such a way that it will help us in understanding the structure in the source text, which is English. And once we understand the structure, that helps us a little bit into understanding how we can translate it into Arabic by breaking it down to phrases, clauses, and sentences. When we are talking about clauses, when we are talking about phrases, we're talking about 5 different phrases. And we know that they are, of course, you have the noun phrase, as we have seen. If there is of in the noun phrase, we translate the noun before it, before we translate what is after of. And noun phrases, generally, if they have more than 2 or 3 nouns, we need to define or point out which one is the main noun that we will start with before we start with the other nouns. If there is an of, then the noun before the of is the one that's the main noun. If there is no of, then it's the last noun in the phrase, in the noun phrase. Adjective phrase, we've seen some of them as well, and we've seen how they can be actually translated. Also, we looked at adverb phrase and prepositional phrases as well, adjective phrase, adverb phrase, and prepositional phrase. These are the different types of phrases which you need to be aware of them when you are translating. Also, I have showed you also clauses and how clauses are, a sentence might have 1, 2, 3, 4 clauses in it. And these clauses are usually connected with each other, but they consist of subject, verb, object. As in the case, the book I bought was useful, and then you've got the book, which is, you can say the first phrase is, I bought the book, and the other phrase, the book was useful. So it's 2 phrases which makes a sentence. And also, all phrases are subject, verb, object, or subject, verb, rest of the sentence, and the same applies to the sentence. So this is, I'm just showing you at the level of a sentence, how to translate a sentence. That is to a beginning, a good start for you, for beginners who are trying to learn how to do, how to actually work on translation from a syntax point of view, because that is how you look at some of these structures, which can help you in understanding the sentence, to break it down to understand it first. Never, this is my rule, and I always tell my students this rule, Never translate something you don't understand. You have to understand it well before you translate. If you don't understand it well, ask people. Check dictionaries. Use references. Try to understand as much as you can. Research well before you attempt to translate any text whatsoever. And texts, of course, can be one word, can be one phrase, can be one clause, can be one sentence. At the level of a word, by the way, which I haven't covered, you can have a word which can be either a verb or a noun. You have to be careful because produce and produce, there are two different words. One, produce is ينتج, and produce is مشتقات من مشتقات الحليب مثلا, milk produce. So it differs. So the word can be a verb, can be a noun, can be an adjective, can be an adverb. So you have to be careful when you are identifying it because it can change its word class. And then above that is the phrase, above that is the clause, above that is the sentence. After the sentence you have the paragraph, which is a text as well, and then a page is a text, then a whole chapter is a text, a whole book is a text, a volume is a text, many volumes are texts, so that is, they are all texts. I hope that you've actually learned something from today's session, episode 2, about grammar and syntax, in particular about sentence, clause, and phrase. I'm just waiting for any kind of comments that you would like to actually be. Hi, Muhammad Abdullah. What the speaker is trying to convey without intervening. Yes, Muhammad Abdullah. You don't know what the speaker is trying to say without convening. Well, I'll tell you something. If you cannot understand what the speaker is saying without you convening, then do that by all means. Because sometimes if you don't understand the speaker, you need to make sure that you try to understand it. Because I think Selezgovich, and I think you were talking about here maybe about interpreting. In interpreting, yes, you do have to understand the speaker well before you interpret. And if you're not sure about the sentence, better not to interpret that sentence, because otherwise you will be in trouble by misinterpreting it. Intervening when it is consecutive. When it is consecutive interpreting, then you can intervene and tell the speaker that I would like to explain this to my audience because they don't understand it well, and then the speaker will give you permission to intervene. I hope that is going to answer your question here. Are there any questions that you would like to ask me, anyone? I'll wait for you to see if anybody is interested to ask me any questions. And if there aren't any questions, then I will ask you to, yes, Muhammad Abdullah, tafadhal. Ask me. It seems to be that you have understood the idea of intervening. You can intervene only when you ask the speaker about this. Okay, even in writing, when someone says, I'll see you soon, he means I'll pay attention to a visit or scenario, a visit in a normal scenarios. But in other situations, it may mean I will have my revenge on you. Yes. Well, let me just say something here. When we are, you're talking about, when you said that you are talking about, I'll see you soon. Of course, this works in any language, Muhammad. Not only in English, but in I'll see you soon. It depends if it's kind of threat here. Now you're talking about the acts, different acts. Speech acts, when you are warning someone or when you are actually just saying goodbye to someone. So that is a different kind of, we talk about the acts here, speech acts. That's quite different. Yes, indeed, when you are saying that, you need to differentiate between when it's like a warning or when it is not really a warning when you're saying this. it depends on the intention of the speaker, and that's what you would say. And of course, it will also be depending on if you are looking at elocution, locution, elocution, and perlocution. And these are different ways of looking at the speech when somebody is saying something. Yes, that is quite different because it's different context and different situation. And that's what you will see. But still, I mean, you can say, I will see you soon, to mean that you are trying to threaten somebody. That happens usually in situations in interpreting sometimes, when it is to do with consecutive interpreting, community interpreting. Any other questions that you have, or anybody else has got that you would like to ask me? I'd be more than happy to answer. Okay, then when we translate, what are the main differences between equivalent and adaptation when it comes to translating sentences? Because I'm really confused. So you want the difference between equivalent and adaptation. You want the difference between equivalent and adaptation. Muhammad Abdullah. Well, I mean, adaptation really is going away a little bit from the text, adapting it to the target language, to the target text, and that equivalent will be a little bit free. I mean, now you talk about two different topics, which is adaptation and equivalence. It depends which author or which scholar you're talking about here, because that will be a little bit of a problem. No sentence can be conveyed without adaptation, right? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, you don't need to adapt any sentence. Adapting is when it is not possible to actually convey it in direct translation, and that's what's called adaptation. You're not conveying directly. That's adaptation. So you are adapting it because of certain issues relating to culture, perhaps, or social issue, or something related to religious or of SEX or whatever. So therefore, you are actually trying to adapt it to make it a little bit less offensive, perhaps, and less shocking to the target audience. That's adaptation. Equivalence or equivalent is to find another word or another equivalent, another word that has the same or similar meaning in the target language as the one in the original, in terms of carrying the same message. And that's what you are doing here in equivalence. There are many equivalence things that are. I mean, when we translate, John likes dry wine, it's like juice. Is this situation, or we found meaning of it? I mean, you're talking here about cultural issue, about to use wine or juice as an equivalent. When you are here, you are giving the actual. You are trying to domesticate the expression by making it into juice instead of wine. Okay. I think if there are any more questions as well, I'd be more than happy to do that. Otherwise, I will have to bid you goodbye. So I'll wait for a few minutes to see if anybody will say. You're most welcome, Muhammad Abdullah. Thank you very much for asking this kind of question. It is quite interesting, and it can be problematic to some students and some people who are translating as well. Okay, I'll wait for a couple of minutes, and if there are no issues or no questions to ask in translation, I will bid you goodbye. Now, what I want you to be aware of when you are translating is to contain the text. This is a very, very important thing. To be in control of the whole text, not to be servant to the text, servile to the text. In other words, the text tells you and you just sort of obey it as it is. You need to understand the text perfectly well, and you need to make sure that you put across the same message over and the same concepts over to the target audience, using words that can be understood by the target audience without confusing them so much when you are translating. And that's why you don't want them to be confused, especially as they are reading something, they don't know what it is. And it also depends also on the purpose of your translation. What is the purpose of your translation? Is it to inform people, or is it to entertain, or it has got some effect like being a speech to address a certain audience? Okay, I have finished my session for today, and I hope that you have managed to understand some parts of it. Have a nice evening, and I will see you next Saturday where I will be talking about another episode that will be different than this one, of course, but it's also related to the same kind of thing. The next one will be also grammar and syntax, and I will be talking about it in details before I move to episode number 3 in grammar and syntax, and then I will move to synonymy, antonymy, and collocation, and phrasal verbs, and so on, acronyms, and the others that will be covered later on. Okay, I wish you all the best, and whoever would like to actually join us next time, I'd be more than happy to answer questions. Please, if you have any questions, prepare them for next class or for next session. I'll be more than happy to answer. Have a nice day.